Okay,
Yes.
because you haven't prioritized it. You don't understand the importance of it. And now if you have great communication at home, I'm also going to bet you've got pretty good communication at your business because it's who you are. And everything starts at the top with leadership.
Are you tired of working more for less profits in your home service business? What if I could show you $100,000 in hidden annual profits in your business in less than 3 minutes? Would you be interested? And not only show you where, but how to create that 100K in 6 months or less without additional advertising or marketing spend guaranteed. Just go to sharpenthespearcoaching.com to see how truly simple it is. That's sharpenthespearcoaching.com. Do it now.
And we are back on STS, Sharpen the Spear podcast. Another incredible guest. The lineup is fantastic every episode, and this is no exception. I've got Diana Jean Aldrich with us, and I'm going to let her do what we always do. Let our guest, who knows, no one knows them better than them. She's going to give us a little backstory, bring us up to speed, Diana. Let us know what we're going to be hitting today, and we'll get into an awesome conversation.
And I love it. Well, thank you for that mini introduction, Richard. One thing your listeners should know is that we're practically neighbors. Of course, we didn't know that until very recently. And I'm in Liston, Wisconsin, and I have a beautiful cedarwood yurt. Been a business owner for, so many years. 2009, I think we broke ground. It's a health and wellness center dedicated to physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and relationship health. More importantly than all of that, I'm a mother and also a dancer and a teacher and a student of the life. And I'm really excited to be here and meet your listeners and just see where the flow takes us.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's exciting. And the reason people will notice a lot of times in our episodes, well, people who, we deal a lot in the home services industry, trades, service, things like that. And you'll get business people and we'll get marketing people and we'll get that. But I always have elements of health, wellness, fitness, okay? Because to me, what I've learned over my whole life is that's a critical component to success. I mean, if you don't have your health, you really kind of don't have anything, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And then how we live, our energy levels, our physical fitness, our ability to move and operate and stay in the game, that really comes down to the things we're going to talk about with you today. And it's really important because everyone starts off hard, right? We call it ignorance on fire. We get running hard, we're starting a business, all that. But pretty soon that hustle and grind kind of mentality starts to really grind us down. And pretty soon you can't keep up the pace. And mentally, you lose your sharpness mentally. That's one thing I noticed, especially from what I'll call a nutritional standpoint, right? That kind of stuff has a great effect on your ability to have clarity, right? To really make quality decisions in the moment, stuff like that. So, yeah, let's kind of get into this. You can kick us off wherever you want to start, whatever aspect. I know you do multiple things here in this arena. So let's just start with your favorite. What's the favorite thing of all that you do? What's at the top of the list? I know it's like children, they're all your favorites, but what really is the favorite?
Yeah. Oh, my favorite. I have an incredible program. You can find it at risingcouples.com, but it's for couples. And the reason why it's my favorite is because we all know on some level, either in fully admitted or in full denial, but on some level, we all know that if our intimate relationship at home isn't right, nothing in the world is right. Our business may be booming, but we go to work and we're not booming. Or, our health is great, but our relationship at home is stressed on any level. We don't feel healthy emotionally, physically, mentally. We're not sleeping well. We're not eating well. We're not socializing well. Our time with friends turns into a gripe session about our beloved, our spouse, our girlfriend or boyfriend. So when I get passionate about the couple stuff, because once the coupleship starts getting healthier and there's some recognition of its import and its impact on the health of the life, all of the other things in the life start getting more and more healthy, including the career, including the business, including the work life. And so it's vital.
Yeah, I will agree with that for sure, because I think I always tell people, and I guest on a lot of podcasts as well, and I tell them, listen, one of the greatest causes of divorce marital ruin is a business. Okay. When you own a business, you're an entrepreneur, and especially if the business isn't run well, it makes it even worse, right? But it's a mistress.
Yes.
It's what it is. It's just you're always on it, you're always thinking about it. And it's so easy to fall into that trap.
Yeah.
Because you're doing it to support, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Let's flip that same coin and say one of the biggest reasons why a business fails is because the marriage at home isn't dialed in. Is that right? Like either way, the business is a mistress, but the relationship is a mistress to the business. Those two, if on equal priority, equal footing, good footing. And we have to throw health in there as well. As I know, your introduction was on point. Our physical fitness, emotional, mental fitness, or spiritual fitness all needs to be there in order for the relationship to be good. The relationship must be there in order for the business life to be good. And if we look back through traditions and spiritual lineages, religions, they all follow a very similar progression or ladder or 3 critical steps. And the first step in all traditions is the self, being aware and conscious of the self and your spiritual, mental, physical, emotional health. The second is always our relationship with other. Now that could be a spouse or a partnership, but that could also be a business associate or a client or customer. How we're relating with the one outside of the self. When those two are harmonized, healthy, vitalized, working really well, then we can take that health out into the world, which is our business and our customer base, and thrive. Because we're healthy, we're in alignment, our relationships are healthy in alignment, then we can serve. Then we can talk about serving the world.
Yeah, I agree with that completely, because this is all stuff that comes out of you. People get it, right? When someone's angry, when they're sad, the shoulders, by the way they walk, right? All the body language. You don't have to say a word, and and even when they do speak, it makes it even more obvious, right? And I'm with you on that, flipping it both. I think both have equal impact, but I will kind of be on your side, I believe. On the couple side, it's more critical. I can start a business whenever I want. I can run another business. I can get that stuff going. But for me, my wife, that's the only one. I'm not looking for another. I don't want another. I got to make this work. This is it. So there's a big difference between the two, but you're right. They run in parallel, but I think they also intertwine. Even if the spouse or anyone in the family isn't involved in the business, it doesn't matter, because they still need to be a cheerleader.
Absolutely.
So if I'm the business owner, I need a cheerleader at home. I don't need to be in my business, and you can take that a couple ways, right? But at the same time, you can say, I just need you to understand where I'm at. And this is a big part of it when I share with my clients. They have to know the game plan. When your family knows the game plan, they don't need to know the minutia, the everyday, but if they know you're in growth phase or in your scale phase, or you're in year 1, of startup, this is what it's going to look like. But then we're going to go here, here, and here. When they know that, they understand, right? You don't come home angry and say you wouldn't understand this business, but now they can actually be your cheerleader, understand that there's an end point to these phases, and it really helps that relationship a lot.
Yeah, the difference in the bottom line of a business, we can really trace it back to the home. And if we think about relationship, there are more stages than this, but if we look at 3 aspects of a relationship could be dissolving, breaking up, heading toward divorce. A relationship could be thriving, the kind of support you're talking about. Your spouse is your cheerleader, your partner is your cheerleader. You're coming home and embraced with love and interest and curiosity about your day and about the work and how your beloved can support you in that. And then there's this other whole mid-range spectrum of relationships that are just coasting, or they're transactional relationships or marriages, or, the relationship has gotten lazy or uninteresting, or the communication has broken down, not to the point of crisis and disaster, but the communication isn't there. And we all have a human need for that kind of intimate communication, not only physically in lovemaking, but in word and in emotion. And when that is lacking, we, men and women both, will begin to not necessarily look for another partner, but look for outside interests. And that could turn into workaholism or alcoholism or recreationalism, or, we begin to look elsewhere. And then that begins the true degradation of the relationship toward separation, toward divorce, ultimately. And so we want to recognize where we're at in relationship and how it's affecting our business and our health.
Yeah, I spot on with that. I mean, I know I've seen, because over time, so I've been married 25 years. Okay. So over that time, you see those, we'll call them waves, right? The high, the low, the dip, and the back up. And you're in and out of communication. A lot of times you have periods of communication that's not so great, because you're in the business and you're working all this stuff, and maybe you're not really communicating now. And, as men, I can speak from that vantage point, obviously. It's easier for us to shut down and internalize it than it is to come home and share it, where a lot of times it's the other way around with my wife and stuff. So I totally get where you're coming from. And it's really important to understand this. I talk about communication in business as well. So relationship is massively important, and it's equally important in your business, because it's one of the number one complaints of any customer is poor communication.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have poor communication at work, I'm pretty sure you're going to have poor communication at home.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Because you haven't prioritized it. You don't understand the importance of it. And now if you have great communication at home, I'm also going to bet you've got pretty good communication at your business, because it's who you are. And everything starts at the top with leadership.
Yeah.
And if communication is a priority to you, guess what you understand? It's no different. It's the same thing in business. So, and I think I'm telling you, it's the number one complaint. If you look at them all, it's communication is it.
Yeah. And I would say it's the number one complaint, side by side with lack of physical intimacy with most of my clients. Communication, not strong enough, not clear enough, not enough of it, and not enough sex. Two in long running relationships and marriages, two biggest issues. And there are two things I'd love to talk about, Richard, on the topic of communication. And one is that we have very little, if no training in how to communicate and how to communicate well with a partner, relationship, or with clients, business partners, family. We see communication breakdown all the time, but it's not our fault. We're not trained how to communicate and how to communicate effectively. And we're certainly not trained how to communicate over the long haul. Like you were saying, those ups and downs in a relationship. Communicating when the relationship is up and elevated and exciting is one thing. Communicating when it's troubled and challenged and there's been, there's grief injected, or there's been a loss of finances, or, there's some challenge. Those are two different forms of communication, and we're not trained how to navigate that landscape. The other thing that I really want us to talk about today, get really passionate about, is the fact that communication is energy. Everything is energy. Relationships are an exchange of energy. Words, sound is a vibrational energy. Our thoughts are energy. So if our relationships and our business is an exchange of energy, we need to start discovering what energy is and who we are as an energy body, as well as a physical, mental, and emotional body. Because if we can affect our energy and how our energy comes off on someone else, it will affect their energy and how they react or respond to us. So Richard, have you ever been in a room and someone walked in and immediately you were like, ooh, I don't want to talk to them. I want to exit stage right now. Really uncomfortable. Do I really have to be sitting at the same dinner table with this human? Have you ever felt that?
Yeah, more than a couple times. I did a talk on owning the room. Commanding presence, right? Like what does it really take to come in the room? And they broke a lot of that stuff down. Like, what do you see? The first thing you see, right? The judgment begins as soon as the first step you take on stage, right? How you hold yourself, what do you do? And then I walk through the whole presentation and stuff on what you do. And that energy comes across as who you are. Yes. And I love this topic because this is the difference between winning and losing, in business and life. Because it's people's perception they get it. It's real. That
Right.
energy is real. I mean, when you're
Yeah.
really down, you're really down, and that comes across. And people, what do they say? What's the matter?
Right.
You didn't say you're sad. They're just like, they just know, right? So they get that energy feeling from you. So, and the way you walk. I'm a very purposeful walker. Okay. If I'm going in the store, I'm on mission. I'm
Yes.
only getting what's on the list. I'm very, the camera can barely pick me up because I'm just moving so quick. I go to the aisle 3 and aisle 6. I grab my 2 things. I go check out. I'm out. I'm back in the car like I was never there. But I'm very I don't shop, right? I'm not a shopper. I am strictly mission oriented, but I move with intention. People see that. If I'm pushing the cart, I'm not laying on the cart, leaning forward like I'm about to die, pushing it along. So I'm moving. And so people are getting out of my way because I'm coming. So I totally get that. And I've always kind of had that and started to realize that it's a tool. It really is a tool. Using this energy as a tool.
Yes,
that can,
absolutely.
Again, it affect, how you get caught up in someone's wake, right? You want to be in the wake of the boat. Right? Water skiing, you don't want to be on the ripple. You want to be in the wake. So you're right behind the energy of that boat, right?
Yeah.
And you can do your best thing. So I love it. I love that aspect.
Yeah. You use the word intention there, and I love that word. In business, the more intentional we are about our business, the more successful we're going to be, short-term, long-term. Every decision, intentional. Every move, intentional. Every conversation, intentional. What I see with so many relationships is the intention at the beginning is really hot, really clear. The falling in love phase is happening and all of the fairy tale intentions are up. Happily ever after and great hot sex for years and building the house together or traveling the world, digital nomad, whatever it is you dream about doing together. But as time goes by, the intentions get a little hazy because so much of life begins to show up. Maybe it's children. And then the intentionality of the coupleship, the partnership gets a little hazy because the intention is going toward the children. And maybe that's the mom, or maybe that's the dad, or maybe it's both, or business is booming or stressful and the intention at home gets a little hazy. And the place I find, my couples, I ask, and I'm going to be very gender specific right now, and I'm going to stereotype just a little for the sake of fun. But imagine, Richard, and all of your male listeners, if you walked into the house every day, the end of your workday, and you were greeted at the door by a woman who was smiling and playful and ready to greet you and hear about your day and just love on you for 10 minutes or 30 minutes or 2 hours. And how would that change the course of your moment, but also your evening and how you get up and go to work the next day and what you're thinking about during the day, because you know what you're coming home to, either an energy that's disappointed or disgruntled or hurried or harried, or an energy that's receiving you, the masculine, with open arms and intention of just loving on you. And then, I talk to the men, what if every time your wife, your spouse, your partner walked into a room that you were in and you just stopped, paused what you were doing and just looked at her, acknowledged her and just smiled at her, just a smile, what that would change and shift for her through the course of the evening or the morning or the weekends. Just these little intentions. And it's all about communication, because in those moments, you're communicating energetically how you feel about your beloved. And we all want to feel loved and seen. And then we want to feel heard. Then the conversation with words can come. But if the energy precedes it with love and receptivity and openness and intention, then we've got a nice little foundation. Our conversation is going to be very different.
Yeah, that's as you're saying all this, I'm just thinking, what would that be like?
What would that be like?
But I remember one time, Diana, we're at church and I'm looking through kind of these 2 sets of doors. My wife's in the children's area, working the check-in or whatever, and I have a beautiful wife. Okay, and I'm like way out in the lobby, and I'm looking, and I'm just looking at her and just thinking, man, I got a really good looking, and then she looks at me and she's just kind of staring back at me, and I'm just looking at her like she's going, what? she's giving me the mouth what? Like, I'm just like, I'm just saying nothing. I'm just, you know what I mean? But you get that. That's the beginning of something like that, but there's times when you just get those realizations, right? Like what you have,
Yes.
and then how do you nurture that? Like what you're saying, that would obviously be ideal, right? That'd be an amazing thing every day. That would be, wow. And I'm not saying I never get that. I'm saying that it's not every day.
Right.
I don't have that anticipation coming home. We've raised 6 kids. We've done all this stuff, so you can imagine where all that stuff's at. But I love thinking through that process.
Yeah.
Because I think it's very applicable.
Yeah, it is. And I'm going to tell you a quick story because it's really powerful. I had a couple come to me and they had been through an infidelity crisis, having lasted several years. They did a little bit of marriage counseling. They both got to the place where they were willing enough to try to stay together. The love was there. They've got 3 children, now grown. But there was enough willingness to see if they could move through to the other side of infidelity, which is a very challenging thing to do. So they've been working with me for 2.5 years. They came through some private couples coaching with me, then into a 10-week workshop, and then my first annual program called Rise in Love. Falling in love is rising in love. I talk about let's kind of clear the falling in love addiction and get into the rise in love addiction so that the trajectory is upward, like the stock market. The stock market goes up and down over time, but the trajectory is up. So we want that for relationship too. And then they moved into my final program, which is called the Rising Couples Legacy Circle. So they're with other couples who've been doing their work. They're lit up, all these couples. And he just shared a couple weeks ago with the group, he shared that he is throughout his day, he gets home earlier than she does from work. She works in the medical field. He works in the trades. He gets home earlier than she does. And he looks forward to her coming home. He cannot wait for her to come home. This is just not even a handful of years since they were nearly divorced, totally betrayed, heartbroken, not seeing any way through this. And now he's not looking elsewhere. He's waiting. He can't wait for her to come home. And when she comes home, she's walking into this environment to this man who used to be, cheating on her, to a man who cannot wait to take her and only her into his arms. And they have this phenomenal relationship that's so inspiring and exciting. And these little intentions, just like your customers in your business. You have got to be intentional with your customers sometimes, not sometimes come home into that loving embrace, but with your customers every time, or you lose your customer. Why do we think that's different at home? It's not different at home.
Yeah, I'm with you. I love that. I think a big takeaway from that for me, Diana, is that it's all repairable.
Yes.
Like, I think that's what people, like what you just said, because you're going from, you're talking no more trust. You got a lot of issues there, right? Infidelity. It's a big thing to overcome, but to see that happen, people need to understand that, because I'm not a fan of quitting. Okay. Mm-hmm. Like, I get failure. Failure's okay, but quitting's not okay. So when you see people who come through it and get to the other side and they have this kind of newfound blossoming relationship, it's encouraging.
Yes.
Okay. It's inspiring. Right. But you can do it. But like I have a men's group I talk to and stuff a lot. I kind of head and we talk about marriage. And one of the things I always say is, well, marriage is work. Yeah. And it's always work and will always be work. Okay. Yeah. You have to put in effort. There's no coasting. There's no, we're there now. There's no there. Okay. No. You're never there. Okay. We're like, it's kind of, and it's funny because some of these young guys, they look at me like, really? Because they've been married 3 years, 5 years. I'm like, I'm just telling you, it's always work. I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm saying that that's your charge. Your wife, in this case, is your charge. This is a courtship that lasts forever. And that's what you need to approach it as. And if you don't, it doesn't mean you got to be, flowers every day and all that stuff. It's all good if you do. But I'm just saying, like, you have to understand there's going to be up and down. There's going to be all these things but the long game is what you're focused on. And again, just like business, it's my long game. It's not how to get to Friday. It's how to build this, to last, run itself, do all that kind of stuff. So I love it. I just love what you're sharing. It's a great story of real encouragement. I think more people need to hear that, because too many people they just want to get that foot out the door and they're gone. They're not going to work on anything. But they hear that this is there's potential for this, and it's a reality is really fantastic.
We're set up so poorly. We're set up so unfortunately, particularly in our American culture. Media, every song is either booty, falling in love, great sex, or betrayal, cheating, infidelity, lost my truck, lost my wife, lost my last horse to the, it's, who's singing and talking, consistently about the work you're referring to, which I talk a lot with my couples about inspired playfulness and curiosity. Because when the playfulness and the curiosity leaves the relationship, then that work becomes a grind.
Right.
If there's passion, which there was, you're together because there's passion, in the beginning for all couples. Just like a business, you have a business because you are passionate, either just simply about making money, or you're passionate about the product or the service you actually offer. Either way, there's passion. If you don't remain curious about it, if you don't keep learning about your trade or how to run a business or great leadership, the passion is going to fade. And again, it just takes a little training to wake people up to relationships. All you need to do is a little training or a little curiosity, a little seeking for some new couples who've been together 20. I've got a couple, they just moved into my Rise in Love group. They've been married 40 years they've been married. He said a year ago to his wife, why would I do this workshop with Diana? What is she going to teach us about marriage? They did my 10-week workshop. They were blown away. He's all in. They signed up for the annual program.
Great.
He's all in. And oh my gosh, the laughter that we were having last week. And, that word work and the idea of sustaining something over a long period of time, it is going to be hard sometimes, just like sustaining a business that you love or raising children that you love. It's not that the work isn't going to be hard, but there can be levity and there can be curiosity. And I spoke about that couple because I had a question for them, like, what haven't you seen in your partner or told your partner that you'd like to, that you never have? And they were like, oh, we don't have anything. We've been together for 40 years. We know everything about each other. We know everything about ourselves. And I'm like, in 40 years, you all haven't changed a little bit? I don't know. From last week, I've learned something new this week. I've changed in the last week. Certainly, there's something new there. And if we can remain curious, then when our beloved walks in through the door, we've got a sparkle in our eyes and we've got a question on the tip of our tongue. And then immediately our beloved feels engaged because we want to know something about them. And that's what feels good, right? To all of us.
Yeah.
Ask me a question and let me share.
It's really, I think when everyone as a podcast host and being a guest on hundreds of podcasts, you start to learn what attention does. Okay, how it makes you feel. You're a guest and you're killing it. You're having a great, you're doing a great job. You're talking, you're bringing all this great stuff, and I'm smiling because I'm hearing all this great stuff and I have these things to come back with, and that's a great experience, right? So you start to understand the energy that kind of stuff creates. It's almost, and for me, I'm just being honest as a host, because I've had other podcasts, I've done hundreds of episodes on those too. It almost becomes this, for lack of a better term, an addiction, because one thing it did for me, my first podcast, was made me a better listener.
Yes.
That was my biggest thing that came out of me having a podcast, was I became a better listener. Because you need to. Yeah. Right? You got to hear, you got to formulate questions, things like that. So, I love that, but I can take that home with me. That's not only on a podcast. You start to realize, I can do that. So that exchange of things you learn, that's new. I've been doing something for a long time. All of a sudden, learn something new is so great to bring to the table.
Yeah.
And how do I apply this in my marriage, in other relationships? Because believe me, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, just call me the steamroller. Okay, I roll right over you. Enough about me. Let's talk about me. Okay, I had some issues. When you start to learn, I got to put the ego in a box, pride in the box, it's time to how about we just sit back and listen? I think part of that is age and wisdom, that combination.
Yeah.
But it's really good. But when you can apply it, like you're saying, when you start to see it and see the value of it, you start to search it out.
Yeah.
The curiosity, like you said, you start to search that out.
Yes.
And you start to have some fun.
Yeah, that's fun. And the fires reignite. And thanks for sharing your own journey. You're speaking about evolution. You've been evolving, you've been growing, you've been changing, you've been learning. Wisdom is based on experience and knowledge, the combination of the two. We can know stuff, but if we haven't had the experience and then applied it, it's not wisdom yet. You've got some wisdom because you've been through it and you've seen it. And so you're evolving. What we know in science, I speak a lot about science. It's really important to get into the nuts and bolts and the brass tacks of energy. But science is showing us now, proving what the mystics have always known, which is the universe is expanding. And we know that. Science has now proven that the universe is expanding. If we are part of the universe, that means that we also are expanding. We are evolving. Now we have to apply that biggest picture called the universe and this one unit within the universe ourselves, and apply those bookends to everything in between, which means that a relationship also must be evolving. And if your relationship isn't evolving, it's disintegrating. If I'm not growing and evolving, I am disintegrating. And we can see it in the elderly. If they don't stay intellectually active, they begin to lose their memory. If they don't stay physically active, they lose muscle mass. If there's not love exchanged in their life, they become depressed and they die sooner. The same is true for a relationship. And in all relationships, just like business, mistakes will be made. In relationship, resentments will be built up. But if you can catch the mistake, if you can recognize the resentment and begin to repair, I love the word repair. I'm not one that loves the word healing. I love the word repairing. If we can begin to repair a few of these things and set our sights to evolving the relationship, then we've got a trajectory that is going to live out the vow from the beginning that we made, the happily ever after, the fairy tale that men and women both get into relationship for to begin with. All of that is so super possible, but we have to understand also what you said earlier, a relationship is never stagnant. We never plateau. Our fitness never plateaus. We might feel like it's plateauing, but energy begets energy. Scientifically, energy is always in motion. We're either spiraling upward, so to speak, or we're spiraling downward.
Yeah, I tell people that all the time, like, do you want more energy? Yeah. We'll go create energy.
Yes.
Go move, go do something, and you'll get more energy. It's how it works, you know? And we talk about from a health standpoint too. I always use a comparison. If I have this incredible thing that you take it 3 times a day and it makes you gives you more energy and this, right? I said, do you go and you want to sell it? Do you go to the 400-pound guy who's sitting in his office or whatever, like, hey man, you need this. This will give you the energy. Or do you go to the guy at the fitness club, running 12 miles an hour on the treadmill, cranking as hard as he can? He's lean, he's fit. Who's your ideal customer? Treadmill guy, because that man knows energy, and guess what he wants? More energy. Okay, so it's like people have to understand. I use it to talk about ideal customers. Like, you have to understand that guy might need it, but he don't want it.
Right.
I can't get someone to someone who doesn't want it. And that kind of goes full circle with what you're talking about with the relationship aspect as well. You have to want this.
Yes.
You know, you can have the answers, you can have the method, you can take the courses, but if you're not willing, if you're not a willing participant, it's going to be for naught. Right? Yeah. It's not going to be effective, and you can blame the program, but it's really you, as it always is. It's always us.
Yeah. There's a really simple but super, super effective, like, mini concept in my training with couples. And it's exactly what you said. And I talk about there's a difference between wantingness and willingness. You can want all day long. You can want a great relationship. You can want great sex. You can want deep communication and connection. You can want vulnerability in your relationship. You can even want healthy space that's supported by your spouse. You can want it all day long. But unless you're willing to do what it takes to get what you want, you'll just sit around wanting it for another day, week, years, decades. But it's that simple difference between putting energy in motion, being in action. And I've seen so many couples, so many come in really skeptical. I had a great, one of my guys, one of the men, husband, he came in kicking and screaming. His wife really wanted to do the workshop with me and work with me. And he came in kicking and screaming. And in the first class, I said, just write on a 3x5 card completely anonymously, something you want me to know about you that I don't already know. And I didn't know him at all. I didn't know anything about him. Everybody wrote on their cards. I didn't know who wrote what, but I read them later. And one of the cards said, I'm skeptical. And I just chuckled and I thought, yeah, I'm skeptical too. I'm extremely cautious. There's so much out there in the world, and I've been teaching and running a business, for so many years. There's so many charlatans. There's so much misinformation or information that's not really useful. I'm super skeptical. So I read this card. I just chuckled. I think they were past their 10-week workshop, and I think they were in the annual Rise in Love program with me. And he came up to me after class one day and he said, I just want you to know that way back at the beginning, I was the guy who wrote that card. And he followed up with that. He said, and I wanted to thank you because you just let me be skeptical. You just let me be skeptical. And you brought me, these are my words now, these weren't his words, but essentially said, you brought me into an experience so I could know what you were talking about rather than think about it or believe it or not believe it. And as soon as couples feel energetically what's possible between them, even if there's resentment, even if there's years of disconnection, even if they're brand new and they're just kind of green behind the ears and they don't know what's coming yet, it's a simple journey to feeling really quickly the love and the adoration and the attraction and the fire that's there. It's just right under the surface, and it's a great thing.
I love it. What I see, there's a commonality here between us, of course, and that part of that is being a doer. You're an activator, what we call an activator, right? You're a doer. And I love it. That's why we're kind of in alignment here, because you'll take them through the process. You're not going to talk about the process. You're going to take them through the process so they experience the process. And I'm again speaking for men, obviously, or the majority of men, it's the process, it's the doing that we're into.
Yes.
We don't want to talk about it.
No.
Okay. There's a point where we'll talk a little bit. We need to do it. It's that connection with men. So when you figured this out, obviously, right? In your couples training and stuff. I think it's really important that it's knowing your client. It's knowing who am I working with, and you have two very different people. You have male and female, and they're different for a reason, because the great saying, if we were identical, one of us would not be necessary.
Yeah.
So you don't have you're not marrying you, so you got to remember, this is all part of the plan, and, this is how it's going to work. But the ability to take action is something I speak about all the time. Imperfect action, right? Just begin the process, go through this, suck it up. Okay. It's a 10-week program. It's a 4, whatever it is. Before we got married, my wife, she got us 10 ice skating lessons. Now, I'm not a small individual. Okay, I'm 6'2", 230, 240, and I remember, and I don't want to ice skate. Never wanted to ice skate. I'm on these skates, I'm whatever I was, 38 years old, 39. And so this little instructor, this girl, tiny little thing, she's in front of me, and she's kind of guiding me, and she's looking up at me, and she goes, "You are really big." And she's just thinking, if you follow me, I'm going to die. Okay. And I'm trying to do this thing on the skate. So I made it to lesson 9. Yes. I tried to get all 10 in. I made it to 9. I'm like, listen, I'm done.
That's really good.
I am not interested in skating. I'm just going to take a pass on this. But it was that thing where I'm going to do it because she wanted to do it. Yeah. Of course, she's skating and having a good time. And I'm just trying not to die. So it was just that thing. And this poor girl trying to instruct me, but she'll probably never forget me. So I got that. But I get it. It's doing, though. It really is the doing.
It is.
And sometimes you got to just put all the skepticism aside, like that guy did. So kudos on him. Right? Like you did it. So there was a willingness, like you said, he can, and you let him sit in the skepticism, which I do too. People, I get it, but I'll show you because we're going to go through it. And then they start seeing the results. It's always about results.
It is,
the whole thing. I'm the results coach. That's what I do. I give people results. So I love it. I just love the whole aspect of this. This has been really, I've enjoyed this conversation, Diana, because I think too many people try to separate this conversation from their business. Right? They try to draw a hard line between the two. Okay. And they don't understand the effect of each, which we talked about. And I think it's a really good thing to hit on and let them know that one doesn't work without the other. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to be a business owner, you're going to be a husband or a wife and a mother or a father and whatever, like this, everything we talked about, like you can take this home. Like, and listen to this again and go, wow, there's a lot that I can be doing to make both things better. And like, I think we've both settled on that stuff at home. And I totally believe this. That's where it begins. If that's not squared away, your business is just an escape. And it doesn't mean it's going to do well. It's your new man cave. Okay. It's just another place to go and hide your emotions and do all that. But say you're doing it for your family who you're totally ignoring and don't show up to the games and the whole thing. I talk about that a lot, so I love this because this gives a real hands-on approach to building that balance, and helping people thrive in that family and that relation aspect, which is health. That's healthy. If that's not healthy, a lot of other things tend to go, So, this has been really awesome. Any final words on this topic and stuff you want to share with anyone?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would respond to just to your last point. The hands-on is so important. It's the difference. You called yourself a results coach. I love that. I would say I'm a results coach. It's the difference between talk therapy, marriage counseling. We're not talking about years sitting, talking back and forth. And is the therapist siding with her or siding with him or siding? This gets in the meat of it, and it's all about doing. And so I just want to back up what you just said because it's a really important distinction. Marriage counseling and marriage therapy absolutely has its place, and yet it's often incomplete and sometimes just doesn't have the lasting value that it needs or the repair value that it really needs. So I just wanted to touch on that. What else would I want to add? I know that your listeners out there likely just don't know where to turn, like where to go for training a relationship at home, an intimate relationship at home. There's talk out there now, kind of in the mass consciousness about tantra, and then there's the priest at the church who's talking about, like modesty and prudence, and there's all of these sort of ancillary, is that the word I want, kind of treatments to relationship. But getting to the soul of a relationship, which is how do we exchange pure energy, as that, like you taught, that we're different, but how do we really become one? And that's the true desire when we come into relationship. And physical intimacy, we can become one that way. But if the emotional intimacy isn't there, it becomes unfulfilling over time. If the intellectual intimacy isn't there, you can emotion all you want all day long and you're not going to feel fulfilled if the mind's not engaged. And likewise, the piece that people just don't know as much about is this energetic body that we all contain and how we're relating energetically. I just have really wonderful, anyone who knows anything about Star Wars and May the Force be with you, or they know about martial arts, which comes from a culture where Tai Chi and Qigong and acupuncture and acupressure and Reiki and all of these, and sound therapy and light therapy. The future of medicine is energy medicine. We know that that's coming. And so I just love to introduce this to folks who know nothing about it, because even a little bit of awareness will change their entire relationship, not only with their beloved at home, but with their children, their parents, their clients, their customers, their friends.
Their own body.
Their own body
too. because I started, I've been on the kind of the health journey for quite a while, red light therapy, all this stuff you talked about, dry saunas, infrared saunas. I've been doing all this stuff, I've been through, and I love it. I'm like, well, this is why I'm still doing the things I'm able to do at my age. Other people are telling how broken they are, and you'll see. I'm like, I've been hearing that every decade. Can you stop? I'm not going to see. I'm on the preventive path. I'm doing stuff, right? Yeah. I'm moving, I'm keeping the energy going and stuff like that. And I think one thing I want to reemphasize you said here in those last words was, if you're not intellectually engaged, okay? I think if the mind isn't there, it becomes transactional. We talked about earlier. Like, it's not just physical. The mind has to be in it. Otherwise, it's incomplete. It's like having a sandwich. Okay? Yes. I mean, it's not your mind has to be, I think that's really, really important that people understand that aspect. Like, and I'll just go back to my little example is me looking at my wife, through those doors and stuff. I was engaged intellectually. I'll call it intellectually, but that's when I was engaged, right? That's the thing. That's the thing. If you put the two together, that's where the power is. And that's what I believe creates more energy as well. So great takeaways, Diana. This has been just fantastic. How can people follow you, get in touch with you? I don't know if you're doing online programs or if they're not in your area, obviously, but what can they do to reach out to you?
It's a great question. And I do online as well as in person. So either way, you can work with me. The easiest way is risingcouples.com. Just go to risingcouples, RISING couples.com, and you'll find my email address there. Just email me, reach out. That's the easiest way. It's risingcouples@4p4h. But you'll also find Lit Up Love, which is a little mini workshop. It's a 90-minute online, take it anytime you want. You can do 90 minutes all at once. You can spread it out over 3 days if time is a bit of a crunch. But, get with your partner and do that 90 minutes. You'll get to know me. You'll get to know how I work and why I work. But I guarantee that as a couple, you will leave with a different relationship after that 90 minutes. You will feel more connected. You will spark some things that you have not felt maybe. And I've got some testimonials. Couples have said, I don't think we've ever felt that. And so it's just $10. For $10, you can just check me out, check out the work. So either email me. I coach couples online and also in person. But I also have this workshop and also this whole bigger program, the Rising Couples Movement, because I just want to see couples lit up and loving each other and loving their lives and loving themselves and loving their children and loving the world. Richard, a lot of the reason I do this is because the children in the modern household are suffering, and they're suffering because their parents are suffering. And we know that adolescent suicide is on the rise. We know that mom and dad is away from home. We know that when they are home, they're arguing or they're resentful. I'm not talking about all couples, of course, but it breaks my heart. And I know that the antidote isn't therapy for the children. It's getting their parents lit up, in love, healthy together, so they can hold that child and help that child navigate through the challenges that social media and modern education and peer pressure and puberty, all the things that have always been true, amplified by these challenges of social media. So for your listeners, let me help you as couples, as parents or future parents, or even as grandparents, really feel together again and be that great example for your children and grandchildren that so many of us didn't have in our parents. Some of us did, a lot of us didn't. I would love to see your couples thriving.
Yeah, I love it. I think I always say more is caught than taught when it comes to kids.
Yes.
They're watching what you do. They're not, I don't want to burst your bubble, but they're not listening to what you're telling them. Right. They're watching what you're doing. If you're not congruent with what you're saying, with how you're walking and how you're interacting with each other, they're only going to do what they see. Yeah. That's going to be the default. People need to know
and what they feel. If they don't feel love between their parents, they're not going to feel loved. You can love them as much as you want, but if they are not recognizing and feeling your love, they're gonna be scared in the world. they're going to be afraid of the world.
And the last thing is, I love you called it a movement, because I have the same thing. I have a movement to help 10,000 business owners create profit, freedom, and impact in their business. It's a movement. It's not help one guy. It's like we all need to be doing this.
Yes.
Let's come get in the movement. Let's all move forward with it because it'll benefit everybody. So I love that you've grabbed onto that too. So again, we're in good alignment with a lot of this stuff. Really awesome. So Diana, it's been just fantastic. Thank you for spending time with us today. It's a little different, but it's just right. Okay. And I love it. I love to drop these kind of episodes in our ecosystem because there's so much benefit that come because you got to shake out of the everyday.
Yes.
And the same thing with this. And probably it's like also, wow, I kind of was just tuning in because I thought I was going to hear another plumber talking, but it's like, here we go. This is even better, So we have a really good mix on the show, and it's really good. You fit in just perfect, and I appreciate you just dedicating the time to share this with our audience. And we'll put all the info in the show notes, everybody. You'll have all that. And as always, tune in for the next STS Sharpen the Spear podcast, and we will see you then. And don't forget, revenue feeds the ego, profit feeds the family. So if you want to see how I can show you at least $100,000 in hidden annual profits in less than 3 minutes, and not only show you where, but how to create that 100K in 6 months or less without additional advertising or marketing spend, guaranteed, just go to sharpenthespearcoaching.com. See how truly simple it is. That's sharpenthespearcoaching.com. Do it now.